Nós, estudantes de Relações Internacionais da PUC São Paulo e integrantes do Grupo de Estudo de Conflitos Internacionais, firmamos uma parceria com Democracy Now!
A partir de agora, vincularemos com legendas em português as mais importantes notícias internacionais da semana.
From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
Car le patriotisme est l'exact contraire.
Because patriotism is the exact opposite of nationalism. Nationalism is its betrayal. By pursuing our own interests first, with no regard to others, we erase the very thing that a nation holds most precious, that which gives it life and makes it great, its moral values.
The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. That's when World War I ended 100 years ago this weekend, while world leaders gathered in France to mark Armistice Day. French President Macron rebuked President Trump's nationalist rhetoric. Trump skipped not only the Paris Peace Forum, but a ceremony honoring American soldiers killed in France because it was raining. We speak to the historian Adam Hochschild about this weekend's centennial, the significance of World War I, and the pacifists who refused to fight in the war. Then, to mark Veterans Day, we speak with Suzanne Gordon, author of Wounds of War, How the VA Delivers Health, Healing, and Hope to the Nation's Veterans.
And there is a huge threat to privatize the VA by people like the Koch brothers, by the infamous hedge fund insider trader Stephen Cohen, who's trying to set up an alternative mental health system to compete with the VA. This is a very serious moment for the VA.
We'll also speak with Suzanne Gordon about the Marine veteran who massacred 12 people at a bar holding a country music night for college students in Thousand Oaks, California last week. The gunman served in Afghanistan and may have been suffering from PTSD. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In California, at least 31 people are dead, more than 200 are missing as three massive wildfires fueled by easterly winds and a historic drought continue to rage. In Northern California's Butte County, the Camp Fire has become the state's deadliest in 85 years after at least 29 people died as the town of Paradise was almost completely destroyed. Recovery workers say some victims were reduced to bone fragments, raising the prospect of a much larger death toll as some 228 county residents remain unaccounted for. In Southern California, 250,000 residents of Los Angeles and Ventura counties were ordered to evacuate the Woolsey fire, including the entire city of Malibu and parts of the San Fernando Valley. The fire tore through oceanside homes as panicked residents sought to escape through a massive traffic jam along the Pacific Coast Highway. The Woolsey fire began near the Santa Ana Susana Field Laboratory, site of a partial nuclear meltdown nearly 60 years ago. California's Department of Toxic Substances Control said it did not believe the flames kicked up any radioactive materials. On Sunday, Governor Jerry Brown said the fires were driven by climate change and that California needs to learn to adapt.
We're in a new abnormal, and things like this will be part of our future. And this won't be the beginning. It'll be things like this and worse.
The fires are so large they can be clearly seen from space. Smoke and ash have left millions of Californians exposed to air quality rated as unhealthy or very unhealthy levels, with residents of Los Angeles, Sacramento, and the Bay Area warned against spending time outdoors. President Trump responded to the fires by blaming California officials and threatening to cut off federal aid. Early Saturday morning, he tweeted, "There's no reason for these massive, deadly, and costly forest fires in California except that forest management is so poor. Billions of dollars are given each year with so many lives lost, all because of gross mismanagement of the forest. Remedy now or no more Fed payments." Trump's tweet drew outrage from first responders and state officials. California Professional Firefighters President Brian Rice called Trump's tweet ill-informed, ill-timed, and demeaning, adding, quote, "At a time when our every effort should be focused on vanquishing the destructive fires and helping the victims, the president has chosen instead to issue an uninformed political threat aimed squarely at the innocent victims of these cataclysmic fires." Among the Southern California communities evacuated due to the fires was Thousand Oaks, site of last Wednesday's mass shooting by a former Marine who opened fire at a country music bar, killing 12 people. New details about the shooter, Ian Long, have emerged. Former high school track coach says Long assaulted her and screamed profanities at her in high school. She described Long as a ticking time bomb who constantly lost his temper, but her attempts to have Long thrown off the track team were overruled by a senior coach who said that would compromise Long's goal of joining the Marines. Sam Tanner, who later served in the U.S. Marine Corps with Ian Long, told the New York Times, quote, "I'm not surprised someone I knew ended up doing a mass shooting. We had another guy recently committed suicide by cops in Texas. Guys struggle. We've lost more Marines in our peer group to suicide than we ever lost in Afghanistan," he said. About 17 veterans a day kill themselves. We'll speak with Suzanne Gordon, author of Wounds of War, about this later in the broadcast. In Florida, vote recounts in the U.S. Senate and gubernatorial races are underway. In the Senate race, Republican Governor Rick Scott's lead over Democratic incumbent Bill Nelson for Senate has shrunk to just 0.15%. In Broward County, Florida's second most populous county, reports of undervoting have raised concern, with 25,000 more people apparently voting in the governor's race than the Senate race. Some say this could be due to the confusing ballot design or problems with the vote counting machines. In the governor's race, Republican Ron DeSantis is leading Democrat Andrew Gillum by 0.41%. Both President Trump and Republican Governor Rick Scott have claimed with no evidence that Democrats are carrying out widespread voter fraud. This is Democrat Andrew Gillum responding to those claims on Sunday from a church in Fort Lauderdale.
The governor has filed another lawsuit to try to keep the votes that were counted in Broward County just yesterday from being added to the total tally. These are legal votes. These are legal votes that have been cast. And we are right now in court fighting to have those votes counted.
Gillum originally conceded his race election night, but has since retracted the concession as his opponent's lead narrowed. Florida's recounts are scheduled to be completed by Thursday. In Arizona, Democrat Kyrsten Sinema has increased her lead over Republican Martha McSally to almost 1.5% in the race to succeed Republican Senator Jeff Flake, but hundreds of thousands of more votes remain to be counted. In the Georgia governor's race, Democrat Stacey Abrams filed a federal lawsuit Sunday calling for rejected absentee and provisional ballots to be counted in a race that's still too close to call. Unofficial voting numbers put Republican Brian Kemp in the lead of 50.3% of the vote. If his lead shrinks to 50% or less, the race will go to a runoff. In Orange County, California, 15-term Republican Congressmember, former Reagan speechwriter Dana Rohrabacher, has lost his seat to Democratic challenger Harley Ruda. The Mississippi Senate race will head to a runoff later this month after neither Republican incumbent Cindy Hyde-Smith nor Democratic challenger Mike Espy received the 50% of the vote needed to declare victory. Hyde-Smith is coming under fire for a remark earlier this month during a campaign stop. In a video of the event, she's heard saying, quote, "If he invited me to a public hanging, I'd be in the front row." Hyde-Smith is referring to a local rancher in the video. Her opponent, Mike Espy, is African-American. The FBI is investigating a Florida company where Matt Whitaker, President Trump's pick for acting attorney general, once served as a paid advisory board member. Last year, the Federal Trade Commission shut down the company, World Patent Marketing Incorporated, after a number of inventors, including military veterans, said the company cheated them out of their life savings. Whitaker was paid at least $9,300 to serve on the board of World Patent Marketing and appeared in promotional videos on behalf of the company. As acting attorney general, Whitaker will oversee the FBI, which is now investigating Whitaker's former company. The growing scandal came as Democrats questioned whether Trump's appointment of Whitaker is constitutional. They also warned against any interference by the Justice Department in Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. On Friday, Trump was asked if he'd spoken to Matt Whitaker about the Mueller probe before appointing him acting attorney general.
I didn't speak to Matt Whitaker about it. I don't know Matt Whitaker.
President Trump's comment Friday directly contradicted a previous statement he made a month ago. This is Trump speaking on Fox and Friends on October 11th.
I can tell you Matt Whitaker's a great guy. I mean, I know Matt Whitaker.
Further about whether he hired Whitaker in order to end the Mueller probe, Trump attacked reporters. This is Trump being questioned by CNN's Abby Phillip.
Rein in Robert Mueller?
What a stupid question that is. What a stupid question. But I watch you a lot. You ask a lot of stupid questions.
Abby Phillip is one of 3 prominent black women reporters Trump has attacked in recent days. Last Wednesday, Trump accused PBS reporter Yamiche Alcindor of asking a racist question at a White House news conference after she asked Trump whether he was emboldening white nationalists. Trump went on to attack April Ryan of American Urban Radio Networks, whom Trump repeatedly told to sit down Wednesday as she tried to ask a question about voter suppression.
The same thing with April Ryan. I watch her get up. I mean, you talk about somebody that's a loser. She doesn't know what the hell she's doing. She gets publicity, and then she gets a pay raise, or she gets a contract with, I think, CNN. But she's very nasty, and she shouldn't be.
In more news from the Justice Department, Jeff Sessions signed a last-minute order limiting the use of consent decrees Wednesday, hours before he was fired by President Trump. The order will restrict the ability of law enforcement officials to use court-enforced agreements between the Justice Department and local police departments to enact changes when the police departments have been accused of abuses and civil rights violations. In Paris, President Trump joined world leaders Sunday as they gathered to pay tribute to the millions who died in World War I. On the 100th anniversary of the armistice that ended the war. Speaking at a formal ceremony at the Arc de Triomphe, French President Emmanuel Macron warned growing nationalism in countries, including the United States, threatens the world again. After the ceremony, over 70 heads of state attended the Paris Peace Forum. President Trump was reportedly the sole head of state to skip it, returning to the U.S. shortly after it began. Trump also faced widespread criticism for his decision to cancel his visit to a U.S. military cemetery on Saturday because it was raining. After headlines, we'll speak to historian Adam Hochschild, whose article for The New Yorker earlier this month was headlined 100 years after the armistice. From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
We're in a new abnormal, and things like this will be part of our future. And this won't be the beginning. It'll be things like this and worse.
In California, at least 44 people are dead, more than 200 missing, as the state continues to battle the deadliest fire in California history. While President Trump blames poor forest management, Governor Brown says climate change is the issue. We'll go to California for the latest. Then we look at the controversy over President Trump's selection of Matthew Whitaker to be acting attorney general.
I didn't speak to Matt Whitaker about it. I don't know Matt Whitaker. I can tell you Matt Whitaker's a great guy. I mean, I know Matt Whitaker.
The state of Maryland is heading to court today to challenge the legality of Whitaker's appointment. We'll get the latest and look at Whitaker's radical legal views and his ties to a company accused of scamming veterans out of their life savings. Then to Gaza, where 6 people have died in the heaviest Israeli airstrikes since 2014. Targets include one of Gaza's main TV stations. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In California, the death toll from the raging wildfire in Northern California reached at least 42 Monday, making it the deadliest in the state's history. The campfire burned down more than 7,200 structures, most of them homes, and razed most of the city of Paradise. At least 200 people are still missing. In Southern California, at least 2 people have been killed as the Woolsey and Hill fires continue to burn in Los Angeles and Ventura counties. On Monday, L.A. County Fire Chief Darrell Osby responded to Trump's tweet over the weekend attacking California's forest management and threatening to cut off federal aid, calling Trump's remark hurtful.
I can just tell you that we're in extreme climate change right now. We don't control the climate. We're doing all that we can to prevent incidents and mitigate incidents and save lives.
After headlines, we'll go to California to discuss the links between California's historic wildfires and climate change. In Arizona, Democrat Kyrsten Sinema has won the race for a U.S. Senate seat, defeating Republican and former U.S. Air Force pilot Colonel Martha McSally. Sinema will replace outgoing Republican Senator Jeff Flake, who is retiring. Sinema worked on Ralph Nader's presidential campaign in 2000. She'll become the first openly bisexual senator, the first female senator from Arizona, and it's the first victory, a first-time Democrat has won a U.S. Senate seat in Arizona in 30 years. It means Democrats will have at least 47 seats in the Senate as results from Florida and Mississippi remain uncalled. As the Senate and gubernatorial recounts continue in the state of Florida, President Trump said both races should be called for the Republican candidates, claiming voter fraud without any evidence. Trump tweeted the Florida election should be called in favor of Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis, in that large numbers of new ballots showed up out of nowhere and many ballots are missing or forged. An honest vote count is no longer possible. Ballots massively infected must go with election night. Trump's tweet drew outrage and alarm. Vermont Independent Senator Bernie Sanders responded on Twitter, Donald Trump, like his friends in Russia, Saudi Arabia, and North Korea, is an authoritarian leader who does not believe in democracy. The election officials in Florida, Georgia, and Arizona must ignore the rantings of this president and count every vote, Sanders tweeted. In Mississippi, Republican Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith came under increased pressure Monday as video went viral of a remark she made during a campaign stop earlier this month. In it, Hyde-Smith is seen campaigning with a cattle rancher, stating, if he invited me to a public hanging, I'd be in the front row. Hyde-Smith's opponent for the Mississippi Senate seat is African-American Mike Espy. Questioned by reporters Monday, Hyde-Smith repeatedly refused to answer questions about her remark.
We put out a statement yesterday, and we stand by that statement.
Could you expand on it then, why you said it, what you meant by it, and why people in the state should not see it as offensive?
We put out the statement yesterday, and it's available, and we stand by that statement.
Senator, are you familiar with Mississippi's history of lynchings?
I put out a statement yesterday, and that's all I'm going to say about it.
Mississippi was once considered the lynching capital of the United States. Hyde-Smith and Espy will move to a runoff later this month after neither candidate gained the 50% of votes needed to secure the Senate seat. The Daily Beast is reporting ICE is currently imprisoning a record 44,000 people, an all-time high. The figure is 4,000 more than Congress has granted funding for ICE to hold. ICE and the Department of Homeland Security have not responded to requests to explain where the additional money is coming from. In September, Democratic Senator Jeff Merkley revealed the Trump administration transferred nearly $10 million from FEMA to ICE over the summer. This comes as the Washington Post is reporting President Trump is preparing to oust Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen. She came under intense fire this summer over the Trump administration's family separation policy, with Democratic lawmakers demanding her resignation. Trump canceled a visit with Nielsen sent to Texas this week to visit troops at the U.S.-Mexico border after Trump deployed thousands of soldiers ahead of the arrival of several Central American caravans. This comes as human rights groups are seeking to halt Trump's recent order banning immigrants who enter the U.S. outside of legal ports of entry from ever seeking asylum. Details are emerging about the audio recordings that reportedly capture the last moments of the slain Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi's life and could directly implicate Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in his murder. A member of the Saudi kill team responsible for the assassination at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul reportedly can be heard saying on the phone, quote, "Tell your boss," and the deed was done after Khashoggi was murdered. The call is believed to be between Maher Abdul Mutreb, one of the Saudi agents at the consulate, and an aide to the Crown Prince. On Monday, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau confirmed Canadian intelligence officials had heard the recordings of Khashoggi's death after Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said he'd shared the recordings with the U.S., France, Germany, Saudi Arabia, and others. Meanwhile, a reporter from the Turkish daily pro-government Sabah newspaper told Al Jazeera Khashoggi's final words as heard on the recording were, "I'm suffocating. Take this bag off my head. I'm claustrophobic." Amnesty International has withdrawn the Ambassador of Conscience Award, its highest honor, from Burmese leader Aung San Suu Kyi in response to the military atrocities and ongoing persecution of Burma's Rohingya minority. In a letter to Suu Kyi, Amnesty International Secretary General Kumi Naidu writes, "You have chosen to overlook and excuse the brutal oppression and crimes against humanity committed by the military against the Rohingya, and your office has actively shielded the military from international scrutiny and accountability. We have also been appalled to witness your administration spread hate narratives against minorities, fostering rather than challenging discrimination and hostility," unquote. This comes as the repatriation of Rohingya refugees from Bangladesh back to Burma is scheduled to start later this week. Many human rights groups warn Burma is not able to guarantee safety to returning refugees, and many are reportedly fleeing camps to avoid having to return to Burma. In Gaza, Israeli air attacks have killed 6 Palestinians a day after a botched raid by Israel prompted deadly fighting. The airstrikes hit several residential and commercial buildings, including the Al-Aqsa television studios. Israel says one 40-year-old man was killed when a rocket fired by Gaza militants struck his home in southern Israel. Israel says 70 other Israelis were wounded by Palestinian rocket fire, marking it the worst violence since Israel's 2014 assault on Gaza. We'll have more on Gaza later in the broadcast with Palestinian writer, activist, and student Mohammed Shahada. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, an outbreak of the deadly Ebola virus has become the worst in the country's history. Congo's health ministry says nearly 200 people have died of the infectious hemorrhagic fever. About half the victims are from the city of Beni, where recent attacks by armed groups fighting for control of the DRC's mineral wealth have slowed efforts by medical workers to halt the spread of Ebola. The New York Times is reporting North Korea is moving ahead with its ballistic missile program at 16 hidden bases that have been identified in new commercial satellite images. The Times cited photos taken from the company Digital Globe, which appear to show activity around secretive mountain bases. But the photos cited by the Times and then widely reported elsewhere were in fact taken last March, about 2.5 months before North Korean leader Kim Jong-un met with President Trump in Singapore and pledged to disarm his nuclear arsenal. The Vatican has ordered U.S. bishops to halt a planned vote on a range of measures designed to address the ongoing child sexual abuse crisis in the Catholic Church. The order came as over 350 Roman Catholic bishops gathered in Baltimore for their annual conference where they were set to debate and vote on the reforms. Survivors and sexual abuse advocates condemned the move by the Vatican. This is Ann Barrett-Doyle of the advocacy group bishopaccountability.org.
I am stunned and disappointed at the lack of courage being shown by the conference. These are American children being hurt. These are American survivors. These bishops are American citizens. I know that they answer to the Holy See, but there's a bigger imperative here. which is that children and victims need them to step forth and start being responsible leaders of this institution.
Conservative writer, conspiracy theorist, Roger Stone associate Jerome Corsi said Monday he expects to be indicted by special counsel Robert Mueller. Corsi told listeners of his daily web show that he had given over 40 hours of interviews to Mueller's team and had been recently told he would be indicted, possibly for lying to federal investigators. At least 9 associates of longtime Trump advisor Roger Stone have been questioned by Mueller's team as they investigate possible collusion of Russian agents with the Trump campaign during the 2016 presidential election. Former First Lady Michelle Obama's highly anticipated memoir has been released. In it, Michelle Obama recounts how Trump's birther conspiracy theories against her husband and his, quote, underlying bigotry and xenophobia endangered her family. Michelle Obama also takes aim at Trump's sexism in the book and talks about the challenges of being the first black First Lady of the United States. The Obamas reportedly received $65 million for a joint book deal last year, of which Michelle Obama's Becoming is the first release. The Wall Street Journal reports retail giant Amazon has selected a pair of cities to host its new expanded headquarters, Crystal City in Arlington, Virginia, and Long Island City in Queens, New York. Amazon's decision came after a 14-month search that saw cities around the U.S. promise tax breaks, taxpayer-funded infrastructure, and business-friendly ordinances in an effort to win what Amazon says will be $5 billion in new investment and thousands of jobs. The watchdog group Good Jobs First has blasted the New York and Virginia deals, writing, citizens have no idea what their elected officials have promised to a company headed by the richest person on earth, but we do know that both deals were negotiated in secret without any public input, unquote. The stock market took a steep plunge Monday, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropping 600 points, driven in part by a drop in tech stocks. President Trump took to Twitter to blame Democrats, writing, the prospect of presidential harassment by the Dems is causing the stock market big headaches. And the famed comic writer, Stan Lee, creator or co-creator of some of Marvel's most well-known and beloved characters, has died at the age of 95 in Los Angeles. Stan Lee has been credited with helping to propel Marvel Comics to the world's top publisher of comics. He served as editor-in-chief and later publisher for Marvel, and created or co-created the widely popular characters Black Panther, Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, and the Incredible Hulk, among many others. Stan Lee was embroiled in some controversy over his career, as some claimed he stole credit from other artists, focusing the spotlight on himself at the expense of his co-creators. In 1968, Stan Lee penned an essay about the threat of racism, writing, quote, bigotry and racism are among the deadliest social ills plaguing the world today. But unlike a team of costume supervillains, they can't be halted with a punch in the snoot or a zap from a ray gun. The only way to destroy them is to expose them, to reveal them for the insidious evils they really are. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
Nosso programa fica por aqui. Você pode acompanhar a gente pela página do Facebook e pelo blog do GS Terra em Transe. Nos vemos na próxima semana. Até lá!